Okay, we need to discuss what is happening here with the potential new model of the Nintendo Switch 2. There's been a lot of information and rumors and discussion and digging into this. Some people brushing it off as nothing, others saying, no, there's more to this. And let me just tell you something. As somebody who's been playing Nintendo modular or portable or hybrid systems from the beginning, I think it's a little bit silly to not think that Nintendo has something else down the line when it comes to a revision of a system, especially a system that you can hold in your hands. They've essentially done this for every single portable platform or any platform that's been handheld, that's been able to be just held when it comes to it. That has been redone. That has been revised. That has been shrunken. That has been enhanced. There's always been something when it comes down to it. So we're going to get into the evidence here when it comes to what Nintendo is potentially doing with a new model Nintendo Switch 2. But before we get into that, please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, and click that notification bell because we are giving away a Nintendo Switch 2. So if you want to have a chance to enter, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment below. Winner will be given away at 150,000 subscribers, and we already hit 130,000, so that's awesome, plus a $50 eShop card given away at the end of this month. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into this here. Shout outs to Nintendo Everything and everybody that dug up the information. So just when you thought that we passed Nintendo hardware speculation for a good amount of time, considering the Nintendo Switch 2 launched last year, we're right back at it again with a new rumor of a Nintendo Switch 2 hardware announcement or something that Nintendo's working on. So the latest talking point is about some sort of potential device that we've yet to see. Fans noticed on the Nintendo account portal site, there's a model with the name of OSM. This is further unconfirmed, but there's a chance that we could know what OSM might stand for. Nintendo Switch 2 apparently had the codename of Ounce, and fans are wondering if OSM could be Ounce small model. Further speculation could have this being something like Nintendo Switch 2 Lite or some sort of smaller model. Now, Blue Sky user dutesky.re shared the discovery on the social media platform recently. The Nintendo account portal contains images for Nintendo Switch model, which you attempt to plug in OSM. It shows that Nintendo Switch 2 image. The website script also lists OSM as a product code. So the interesting thing with this is that I don't think Nintendo would make it so obvious, but then sometimes they have made it so obvious with this. But for me, I'm not necessarily thinking that this means that they have some type of small model or new model or something. To me, it's just I would say, foregone conclusion that Nintendo will eventually do some type of new model, and this could be maybe a small part of that or something to it. But I don't think Nintendo would have it there so easily findable when it comes to a new model Nintendo Switch. I just think that it's going to happen regardless, because if you look at the Nintendo Switch 1, that had a Nintendo Switch, the original. Then they had a V2 of the Nintendo Switch, which improved the battery life and I think improved the build quality a little bit, felt just a little bit better overall. I think that the Joy-Cons were probably a bit more stable for the long run because I got the V2 Switch, and yeah, it's definitely a little bit better on the battery overall, actually quite noticeably better on the battery when it comes to that. And then there was the Nintendo Switch Lite, which they actually advertised that and said, hey, this is, you know, the next new model of something. So that's 3 models within the first number of years, 2 which they actually marketed when it comes to the Switch 1 and when it comes to the Switch Lite. And then the V2 Switch was just kind of like, hey, it's there, you know, so it looks like a little bit different from the box. So yeah, if you want it, you can get it. And I think that a V2 Nintendo Switch, if this is what that could be, would be really good. If they can somehow keep the form factor, keep the shape, but improve the battery life of this device for newer systems, that would definitely be a good thing, because the Nintendo Switch 2 battery life is one of the knocks on the system. Now, it's pretty good when it comes to a high-powered system running DLSS, running games at 120 FPS or 60 FPS with the type of graphics that you can get. It's hard to get that type of performance per watt and the battery life at the price that the Switch 2 is at. So I'm not knocking it for that. I just think that it would be great if they could get that battery life just a bit better. I think even 30 to 45 minutes would be better for a V2 type Switch 2 revision like we saw by a bit. And then the Nintendo Switch OLED came through after the Nintendo Switch Lite a couple years after that. So 2019 Switch Lite, and then 2021 was the Nintendo Switch OLED. So I do think that Nintendo is in line for another new model probably in the next couple years. I don't think this is going to be this year because the Nintendo Switch 2 just launched in June of 2015, but I do think by next year, mid-time or so, we could see more information. We could see something when it comes to a new model of the Nintendo Switch 2, and maybe even a light model of that. People think that the system maybe is a little bit too big, so if they're able to shrink that baby down, of course, no Joy-Cons on there, and make it like a one attached system and much smaller, so maybe probably about the size of the original Nintendo Switch 1. If they can make a Switch 2 that size, but with the power that the system has, I think that would be really good overall, and people would pick that up. But one big problem, of course, would be price. What would you price that at? Because here in the US, the Nintendo Switch OLED is still $400. It is a price increase. Went from $350 to $400 because of tariff and taxes and certain things. So it'd be interesting how they actually pull this one off, but I'd be going for it. I picked up a Switch Lite, and I think that it's a nice system overall. I didn't use my Switch Lite too much, and I ended up giving it to my nephew, but I did get the special edition Nintendo Switch Lite, the Zelda one. So I do think that it's possible that, yeah, depending on what they put out there, what colors and all that, it'd be something that I would look into. But then I have to buy another, maybe like Satisfy grip and all that. So yeah, I'd look into it though. I think I'd actually pick up one of those if it was a nice package, and of course, depending on what the price would be. So what do you guys think about a potential new model Nintendo Switch 2 Lite or something along the lines of that? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, but moving on to the next topic here, we're going to discuss the big sales jump in Japan over the last 2 weeks, because we've got some numbers and how Nintendo has already surpassed one of the legendary systems in its lineup, with the Switch 2 surpassing the lifetime total of sales in Japan of the Nintendo GameCube. So we've got about 7 months versus 5 years plus the lifetime sales, and the Nintendo Switch 2 has passed that up. So the Japanese sales came out, and the Nintendo Switch 2 has sold 4,097,905 units in Japan by January 11, 2026, according to the latest Famitsu data. Now, the console hit that mark faster than any other system in the history of systems in Japan. It outsold the original Nintendo Switch and the PlayStation 5 by a pretty big margin overall, with a couple of strong weeks. Over the past 2 weeks, Nintendo Switch 2 sold 313,000 units plus in Japan. Big games like Mario Kart World have been a driver for the platform. Over 2.7 million copies physical sold in Japan, in addition to Pokemon Legends ZA that has sold over 2.5 million units, and games like Donkey Kong Bonanza and Kirby Air Riders are going on 500,000 units sold physical only. Doesn't count digital sales in there, where it's all higher when you start adding that up. Now, the Nintendo GameCube has lifetime sold 4.04 million in Japan. The Nintendo Switch has sold 4.09 million, and the Nintendo Switch 2 is selling so fast at this point, it's actually more than halfway past the total lifetime sales of the PlayStation 5 in Japan. That's at around 7 million something. The Nintendo Switch 2 is already past 4 million. And I think that Nintendo is going to continue putting out big shipments in Japan in order to get more and more sales there and just drive things. There's been a lot of talk about stock prices and all sorts of stuff that really just doesn't matter at the end of the day. I'll say this once, I'll say it twice, I'll say it 3 times, because I said it once, twice, 3 times and more 10 years ago, or however many years ago, 8 years ago, whatever, when the Nintendo Switch 1 launched, and people would say all sorts of stuff. Oh, it's not selling like this, so the PS4 outsold it. And it's like, who cares? We're not Nintendo. We don't have stock in the company. It does not matter at the end of the day. All that matters is that developers take it seriously, and it sells enough to where third-party developers are like, oh, that's a viable platform. I can put my games on there. Whether it sells 190 million units, passing up the PS2 by 30 million, or it sells 100 million units, or it sells 120 million, or it sells 90 million, that's none of anybody's concern at the end of the day, because what we just need is that we need for it to sell good enough for third-party developers to just say, we're going to develop our games on there. And if it does that, then that's all that really matters at the end of the day. And that's what I'm looking for. And right now, the system is selling so good to the point to where third-party developers are like, okay, we need to support this system. We're going to put good developers on this system. We're going to make sure that the games run and look good to the best of their ability for the most part on this system. And that's what these sales do. It's not some type of pecking order over the PlayStation or over Xbox. Like, who cares? We don't get any money from that. What it really means is that developers are going to be serious about this, because if you have bad sales like the Wii U, kiss that third-party support goodbye. Kiss those Resident Evil games goodbye. Kiss all of the good stuff that you want to play third-party wise and developers taking the time to actually develop for the system goodbye. That's the reason why we even have third-party support so early in the life, is because the Nintendo Switch 1 sold so well and developers did well on that platform, so they didn't want to waste time this time around and made sure to get their engines and get stuff ready for the Nintendo Switch 2. So that's the reason why I want to see good sales, so we continue to get good games, good third-party support overall. Nintendo has a long lifespan with a lot of support, so we can get maximum value out of the system that I bought. That's really what it comes down to at the end of the day. Everybody can buy whatever they want overall, but for me at least, that's how I see it. I want to see it break more records. I want to see it do better, just so developers can continue putting out the games on the platform. So it's cool to see that Switch 2 already beat out the GameCube. GameCube is one of my favorite systems of all time. I love the system so much. When it comes to worldwide sales, the GameCube did around 21 million units or so. So the Switch 2 is going to outsell that probably by mid-year-ish, something like that. I'd probably say that it's going to outsell it by then. And then, of course, if we get bigger announcements and all that, it's going to blow it out of the water when it comes to overall sales when it's all said and done. I think that Switch 2 is obviously, that's going to happen. But yeah, GameCube, great system, just came out at an interesting time with interesting scenarios that led it to be what it was, but that's the past. You kind of learn from everything. I still think GameCube's goated though. You can pick up a GameCube today, plug it in and play, and it's still incredible. It's still a great system. It's still a lot of fun to play, and the games are impeccably made on there. They still play really good. Check out Beautiful Joe if you haven't done so already. Or even the Nintendo NSO, the GameCube Online. The games on there are still very fun to play when it comes to Luigi's Mansion and other games that are on the GameCube NSO. Path of Radiance, that game is great. Fire Emblem's so good on there. So that's kind of how I see it at this point. Great legacy. Yes, didn't sell the best. Yes, obviously not where people really wanted it when it comes to Nintendo and all that, but still gave us incredible games, gave us a great controller, and gave us a lot of fun memories. And the Switch 2, I think it's going to do that and then some with a lot of the games that are coming out. But another thing that I wanted to mention here with this is that if you look at the Famitsu sales, just with a number of the different games here, I think that you're starting to see that the Switch 2 is kind of inserting quite a number of different titles. When the Nintendo Switch 2 first launched, it was tough just because there wasn't as many games when it comes to what people were actually going to buy on the Switch 2. But now you've got Mario Kart World, that's obviously doing really well. You've got the Momotaro game, that's Switch 1 and Switch 2 with the top 10 here. They also gave the top 30 and all that, and Switch 2 is just littered all throughout it. But Pokemon Legends ZA, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Kirby Air Riders, and then people are buying Animal Crossing just because the update for Animal Crossing that's coming out, so people are getting back into that game, picking it back up if they sold it and all of that. But it's just good to see more Switch 2 games coming. Now, I do think by, I would say this time next year, you're essentially just going to see mainly Nintendo Switch 2 games. I think that Nintendo will have enough games out, and also third parties will have enough games out to where you're going to see a lot more Switch 2, where it says SW2 and not Switch 1 there. But you're already starting to see quite a bit. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out of the top 10 titles are Switch 2 games, but some of those have Switch 1 counterparts. So I think that by this time next year, I think it's just going to be a lot of games that are on Switch 1, but just on Switch 2, because Nintendo's set to have a huge year this year. I think Nintendo's going to have a very big year with their games, with the Nintendo Directs coming up, which I've talked about on the channel. If you haven't seen my video about it, check it out. I talked about the big leaked Nintendo Direct date of February and when we're going to be getting that, plus 3D Mario, and I have some other videos that I'm going to be doing talking about some stuff that I might have heard a little bit here or there when it comes to Nintendo's plans for the Nintendo Switch 2 with certain games. So I think that will also be exciting and fun, and more people are going to pick up the system and the games and all that. So that's really what it comes down to. It comes down to the games, what people are playing overall, and I think that it's been a blast so far, and even more games are coming out. First half of this year is going to be crazy on the Switch 2. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, we've got Monster Hunter coming out, Resident Evil as well. There's a lot of good stuff, and even a new IP with Pragmata. So it should be fun to see all these different games coming out and how they react and how the games play too, running on the Nintendo Switch 2. So what do you guys think about all the different topics that we discussed here? Let me know in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you're someone new, click that notification bell, and make sure you check out my top 15 best Nintendo Switch 2 games of 2025 if you're looking for something new to play. That'll be right here on screen. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you guys for the next one. Peace.